Hey now! Time to make some sourdough here. Today I am attempting to make what I'm going to probably call cinnamon bun sourdough loaves. I have played around with cinnamon raisin sourdough before. The last time I did it is something I don't really want to discuss. It didn't go as well as I wanted. However, what I'm going to do today is kind of go take a different track. With that last one, I was incorporating the cinnamon and everything in with the autolyse and all that, and I've since realized that that was inhibiting some yeast growth. So today, when I'm putting in the cinnamon, it's also going in with a whack load of brown sugar, and that's going to be during the lamination later on. So at this point, I've got my my bread going. I'm just following my basic sourdough recipe. You can check out my video on that. The one thing I did change with it is I did add a little bit extra leaven. So normally I go with a 20% leaven addition. This is 22.5%. So other than that, it's 75% unbleached all-purpose bread flour or baker's flour, 25% whole wheat bread flour, and 75% hydration. What I'm going to do right now is this is time to mix. Normally I would just be mixing in the salt. I've got 1.8%. This is fine sea salt that I'm adding in. Oh, and it's been half an hour since I added the leaven. So I'm adding the sea salt. I'm also going to be adding 6% liquid honey. So that's, for my purposes, it's 60 grams of liquid honey to it. Honey is a bit of a hassle to work in. If you saw my honey oat sourdough video where I had, I think, like 250 grams or something of the honey, that took forever to mix in. It just doesn't like to incorporate super quickly. But anyway, I've got that honey there for a little sweetness that's going to be throughout. I'm also going to put in my raisins. So I've got here for raisins, this is 30%. So I did 300 grams of these raisins here, which I had soaking in, or basically rehydrating in some filtered water. And I added an equal amount of filtered water, so it was 300 grams of water, and then also a teaspoon of vanilla. And they smell delicious. I know the water tasted really good with that vanilla in there. And now I'm just trying to get some of the excess water off of here. Because another thing that I noticed with that last cinnamon raisin loaf is I was just scooping them out of the bowl and putting them in there without having strained them at all, and it wound up really quite wet on the inside of the loaves after baking. So this will probably help prevent that. Really trying to learn from some, I guess we can call them mistakes or adventures. Also with that last bread, I incorporated it during the raisins during lamination. However, today, you know what, I'm putting them right in now when I'm mixing in the honey and the salt, and this way the raisins will probably be distributed really nicely. And then when I go to add the sugar and the cinnamon during lamination, I'm just going to have less stuff to have to deal with. It's not going to be a massively thick layer across the dough when I'm doing that. So anyway, I'm going to mix this for about 4 or 5 minutes, and when we come back, you'll see what it looks like all incorporated. Okay, so it has been 4 minutes here. I just wanted to mention that, so I rehydrated those raisins for half an hour in that water. I didn't want them to get too moist and wet, but I also wanted to not just put in straight dry raisins, because there's a chance that they could try to absorb water out of the dough and result in a technically lower hydration dough, one that would be stiffer and a little bit more difficult to work with. But it took just about 2 minutes for that honey to get incorporated. You know what, I was initially debating whether to add the raisins during this mixing phase or during the stretch and fold that'll follow in half an hour, but I'm really glad I went with this. They're really nicely incorporated throughout, and I think it's going to make for a really nice balance of raisins throughout. So anyway, at this point, I'm going to give it half an hour, fire it back in the incubator there, and then when we come back, it'll be time for a stretch and fold. Well, it's been 30 minutes, and now is the time for the stretch and fold portion. So I'm just going to use my filtered water to wet down my work surface here, as well as I'm going to use filtered water to wet my hands to make extraction easier. So this is my first chance to see what this dough is really like after incorporating that honey and the raisins and the salt and just letting it kind of sit for a bit. Ooh, look at that. Very nice. Okay, so stretch and fold time. I'm gonna give a nice big stretch. Ooh. Stretch number 2. Stretch number 3. It's always funny when you load the bread up with so much stuff. It doesn't quite stretch as far as it might otherwise. All right, there we go. 4 stretches and folds. I'm just going to flip her upside down, pop her back in. We'll give it another 30 minutes, and then we'll come back for the lamination, at which point we are going to be adding all of our sugar and cinnamon. Well, there we go after another half hour. Now is the time for lamination. This is when we're going to be adding the brown sugar and cinnamon. So I'm just going to get my working surface all nice and wet here. I'm going to wet my hands and get this dough out onto the table. Just like so, nice and gentle. Okay, I'm going to be done with that bowl because I'll be putting everything into this nice clean bowl once this is done. Now, lamination, as you may already know, or perhaps you've seen it in one of my other videos or just somewhere else online, is a process by which I'm attempting to stretch out this dough as much as possible, creating a relatively thin mat. I think I'm going to have a little bit more difficulty doing that today than with my usual sourdoughs, simply because of all of the raisins that are in here. But I'm going to give her the old college try. Get it as thin as possible. And then once that's the case, I'll be putting on my cinnamon and sugar. Now with that cinnamon and sugar, what I did is it's a blend of best brown sugar. Just happened to be the brown sugar I had on hand. I've got it's a 15% addition, so it's 150 grams of that brown sugar. And then for the cinnamon, I went with 2.5%, so it's 25 grams going in here. That last batch that I made of cinnamon raisin bread that I was not happy with, that was using 35 grams, so it was a 3.5% addition. So I just kind of dialed it back a little bit just to see if that kind of further aids the bacteria in doing its thing. Okay, so here we are. I'm now going to start to sprinkle on my fun layer here, the cinnamon and sugar. Normally if I'm putting stuff on like chocolate chips or pumpkin seeds or whatever, I'll just try to do a strip down the middle because I'm going to fold onto that. But I think because this is going to stick not too bad, I'll also add a little bit over there. Okay, so now stretch it over, a little pat down, help release any large bubbles that might have just been formed there. Get some more in here. Ooh, I'm glad I did this. I was initially going to go with just 10% sugar addition, then I was looking at the amount of stuff in this dish, and I'm like, you know what, I bet you I'm going to want more than that. Plus, I can't see how more sugar in here would be a bad thing. All right, now I'm going to stretch this other third over and on top. A little pat down. Some more in here. A little bit over that. It's going to come folding over top. Looking at this, I probably could have been a little bit more generous during that first layer. So I think what I'm going to do is add some into the bottom of this bowl. So it's going to go underneath everything. You can see in there. Nice little layer, and then that'll probably help with the coil fold portion. So I'm going to tuck this over top here. Get that on there. I'm going to just set it in here on top of that. And then I'm just going to take whatever, just a little bit left here, and sprinkle it in like that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is give this, I'm going to cover it up another half hour, and we'll do our first coil fold. All right, well, I've temporarily lost my camera woman, but I am going to do my first coil fold here. So I'm just going to pick it up, coil that one side around. Oh man, it is not wanting to coil too much right now. I think all of those raisins in there are really kind of slowing that down. Oh my. Let me just try to see if I can get one more out of it here. Woo! Yeah, she is stiff. All right, I'm going to, big air bubble there. I'm gonna let this go another half hour and then see what's going on. If it doesn't seem to want to be coil folding, I'll probably just stretch and fold it then instead. All right, so it's been half an hour. We're going to see what's going on with this here. I have my camera person back finally. Now, if this, when I go to pull it up for a coil fold here, if it doesn't seem like it's going to work very well, I'm going to quickly then just transfer it to the table and we'll do a stretch and fold instead. So, going to be working on the fly here. Let's see. Yeah, you know what? I don't like that for coil folding. So let's go ahead and stretch and fold. Oh man, this thing is such a mess. Ooh. Another stretch and fold here. All that sugar that went on the inside of these layers isn't fully incorporating yet. Oh my goodness. Okay, got this here. Yeah, it's creating a bit of a split in between the layers. Okay, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm actually just going to wind up. I've done the stretch and fold now. I'm going to let this sit for a little while. I think rather than popping it back in my incubator, I'm going to leave it out on the counter here at a slightly cooler temperature, so it's fermenting a little bit slower. I'm going to give it a little bit of time, a little bit of extra time here, and see if it just more fully incorporates. And if it does, then I will attempt to either coil fold or stretch and fold again in a little bit. So I'll just keep checking on it, and when it seems like it's ready, I'll shoot another segment here. So I gave it a couple of hours here. It's funny, I've got this pool of the sugar cinnamon stuff coming out. I gave it a couple hours just to kind of rise a little bit more. What I'm going to attempt to do is just see if I can do a coil fold or anything like that with it right now. Again, this is flying by the seat of my pants, so we'll see. Oh, actually I think I can probably get away with a bit of coil fold action here. Just a little bit. It's a little too sloppy. You know what? Like I said, making things up as I go. I'm gonna just get some of this excess liquid out of here. Maybe I'll eat that paper towel later. I think that's preventing it from being able to actually sit. Okay, I don't want to work this too much more right now. I might just let this sit for another 15 minutes and then play with it one more time, and then probably split and pre-shape. Okay. Alrighty, let's take another look at this here and see what's going on. Yeah, it really does seem like the there's some pockets of air in here. That this cinnamon is probably slowing down the fermentation a little bit more, and I was hoping it would, but this is starting to get kind of like it's a little pillowy now. I think what I'm going to do is just let it go, just go maybe one more 30-minute rest, and then I'm going to divide and shape it and just see what happens. Okay, so here we are after yet another half hour. This is honestly so far like a good 3.5 hours longer than I would normally let my sourdough go. I'm nervous. I guess we're going to find out how things go tomorrow when I actually bake. But for now, I guess we'll just see what happens here. So I'm going to take it out. No need to wet my hands. It's still wet from the residual sugar and cinnamon. I mean, I can't even be angry with this sourdough just because it smells so delicious. But let's clean off here a little bit. And it's fairly even. Look at that big poof there. Oh my goodness. Crazy. All right, so let's just divide this here. Yes, child, I do see the raisin that has fallen out and is sitting there. I will tuck that in. All right, okay, so to attempt to pre-shape this here. Just slopping around. Just kind of give it a little rough shape. Set it over here. I'm going to do the same with this. I really hope this doesn't wind up leaking stuff out all over the place. I might have to put a little dam up around this stuff here once it sets. Okay, set those up, and I'm going to cover them, give them maybe 15 minutes or so, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and then we'll get them into those bannetons, which I'm probably going to get super dirty. Alrighty, time for the final shaping and to get these into the bannetons for the overnight rest. I'm going to grab this one here. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely floppy. I'm super worried that I might have jumped the shark on this one. My current fear is that it was a poor choice mixing the sugar in when I did during the lamination, and that perhaps it should have gone in earlier and I could have just mixed it in directly. But I guess we'll find out tomorrow. I'm not giving up all hope yet. I am going to, though, more heavily flour with the rice flour the bannetons. A little more heavily than usual. I'm also going to spread this one onto there. We'll quickly shape this last one here. At least they're holding their structure not too badly. It's stuff like this that's currently concerning me here. What appears to be like layers that haven't really joined up. Could make for a very interesting looking crumb. But, like I said, we shall see. So, flour on there. Get this first one in. Like that. And then the second. Alrighty, folks. Overnight proof. I'll see you in the morning. Well, next morning, here we are. We've got the oven preheated at 520 degrees. I've got the sourdough out, I've got my lamb, I've got my parchment paper and pizza peel. Something I don't normally do, but I am going to do today is throw some rice flour onto what's going to be the bottom of the loaves, just because there is quite a bit of that cinnamon sugar mixture on there. I want to reduce how much it might potentially burn. I don't know. We're, like I've said a couple times already with this particular bread, we're really flying by the seat of our pants here. So, anyway, time to go. Let's see. Flip. Oh, I'm glad I put all that flour in there. That came out pretty good. All right, so now I'm just going to score it here. Let's do a really simple scoring pattern. This one will get popped in. Out of the way. Time for number 2. Alright, so another really simple score. Drop this one into here, get these preheated lids on top. Then we'll cross my fingers, hope for the best, and we will check on this after, I'm going to say 35 minutes, and I'm going to bake it a little bit cooler than usual. I'll put it at 440. I'll give it 35 minutes and then we will take off the lids. Well, I'm nervous. I don't even really want to do this. It's been 35 minutes, but it's time to uncover and see. Oh, interesting. Oh, not bad. Those actually rose a lot better than I was expecting when I first started out this morning. So anyway, I'm going to close that right back up. I'm just going to drop the temperature probably 10 degrees, leave them in there for about half an hour, and we'll check on them then. Well, it has been half an hour, so let's take a look at these. Yep, those are looking cooked, so let's take them out. Huh. Okay, here we go. Here's my spatula. Pull that out. Oh, we stuck just a little bit onto the bread. That parchment paper. That's not too bad. Number 2. Slide that off. I'm super curious just to take a quick peek at the underside of these. Okay, yeah, no real burning at all. fabulous. Okay, we're going to let those sit for a couple of hours, and then we will actually cut into them. You need to smell my kitchen right now. Regardless of how these turn out, it has been an amazing sensory experience in here this morning. So let's, yeah, we'll see how they turn out here shortly. Moment of truth time. Let's see here. It's had a couple hours to rest, so I'm going to cut into this loaf, and we shall look together. Oh, hey, look at that. That's actually pretty cool. It didn't rise quite as much as I would have liked, obviously, but I mean, it's super filled with stuff, and you actually have these cool little ribbons going on here. Oh my goodness. That is funky. Cool. Okay, well, taste test time, obviously. So let's light into that. Okay, so yeah, the bottom's a little hard, but not as bad as I was fearing that it might be. So let's take a look. If my daughter can stop staring at the bread and maybe show the sides here. Yes, you'll get the other half of this, don't worry. It smells super cinnamony. Is that a word? Cinnamony? It's really the predominant aroma I'm getting here. That is really good. I got cinnamon, I got sugar, I got the raisin, and the raisin was still nice and moist. Kind of burst after I put it in my mouth and bit into it. You know, the bread is super moist as well. I mean, it's obviously not a huge open crumb, but there are pockets of it in there. You know, actually, this wasn't the worst experiment in the world. I think a takeaway from this would be to be more careful with the sugar and cinnamon. I think next time I would maybe mix the brown sugar right into the dough when I mix the dough initially, and that perhaps would prevent all that pooling of and collecting of the watery sugar solution in the bowls, just because that made working with it a little bit difficult. But I'm absolutely going to try to make this again and see if I can perfect it just a little bit. So you know what? Hey, took a stab at it. I'd say this is maybe like 70% where I would like it to be, but pretty darn cool. So yeah, keep experimenting, trying stuff, and keep Red 11.